Hi everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Annalise and I recently started making houseplant content here on YouTube, so if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and leave a comment down below. So today, I'm pretty excited for this. We're going to be transferring a couple plants into Lecca. First is going to be my Thai Constellation. I was meaning to do this for a while because it's been living in sphagnum since I got it a couple months ago, but I was waiting for this leaf to finish coming out. As you can see, it's pretty much done. And so I'm going to start the transition process today, which is super exciting. And then the second plant I'm going to begin transferring is this Philodendron Billietiae. It's actually in soil, as you can see. So it's a slightly longer process to transfer to Lecca, but I'll walk you through the steps. This one won't get all the way into Lecca today, but we're gonna talk about the first couple of steps of transitioning it from soil to Lecca. So I know when I first started learning about Lecca, I found it very intimidating. There were so many things that you had to buy to start out and so many processes that I wasn't used to, like getting nutrient water and flushing and all these terms I had never heard. So I want to break it down kind of simply today on how to transfer a plant to Lecca, and then in the future I'll put out some videos on how I flush my plants in Lecca, specifics on how I mix my nutrient water and other care tips. So stay tuned if you're interested in learning more about the transfer process to Lecca. Okay guys, let's get started. So I'm gonna start off first with my Monstera Thai Constellation. Look how cute she is. This was one of her first leaves that she came with, and this is her newest leaf. It's not fully hardened off yet, but I think it should be fine with the transition to Lecca. So the first step is to kind of ease it out of this jar. You can see it's super rooted in here. I'm gonna ease it out of this jar, and then I'm gonna take all of the sphagnum moss off the roots. Now you really wanna try to get as much moss or dirt, if the plant's in soil, off the roots as possible, because any left over can hold onto moisture around the roots, which can cause rot. And you really don't wanna risk that, obviously. So I'm trying to just ease this out. She is really tightly in here. Trying my best not to break any roots, although it's a little bit inevitable. Whew, that is so satisfying. Okay, she is out. So now I'm just gonna try to pretty much take all of this sphagnum moss off of the plant as best as I can. So here we go. So as you can see, some roots are coming off with some of the spag. I lost a little bit of root here, but I don't stress too much about it. I try to be as gentle as possible, but it's pretty inevitable with sphagnum that some roots are going to come off. In an ideal world, I would have done this sooner before it was so well rooted in the spag. That would have made it a bit easier, but I wasn't able to because I was really waiting for this leaf to come out. I did not want to disrupt it. So here we are, but as you can see, the roots are pretty clear now. I'm gonna give them a quick rinse in the sink to see if I can get a little bit more off, but oh, we did lose some roots there. But to see if I can get some more sphagnum off, but this should be good. It does have a very good root system for the size of this plant. So I think it'll transition very well. Okay, now that the roots are pretty clean, we have to prepare the Lecca. So I use this Grow It brand of clay pebbles, which is Lecca. And I get this off Amazon. It comes in a really massive bag, as you can see, but it is cheaper to buy it in a bulk size as opposed to buying in smaller quantities. I know a lot of people buy their Lecca at IKEA. I've heard they have really well-priced Lecca, but unfortunately it's not as convenient for me to get out there. I don't have a car or anything like that, so I do order mine. But any brand of Lecca really should work. There's not many differences between the brands, except sometimes the uniformity of the actual pebbles. What is Lecca? Lecca stands for Lightweight Expanded Clay Aggregate. It looks like this. So there's these little clay balls. Some brands have a lot that are super circular. My brand has a lot of irregular shapes. There's little clumps like that. Here's a big piece. I kind of like the irregular shapes because I feel like they mold around the roots better. But if you want that more uniform look, you can find more uniform clay pebbles. So basically, Lecca is a great growing medium, and I fell in love with it because it takes so much of the guesswork out of taking care of plants. So I know initially I struggled with overwatering, and then trying to come back from that, then I struggled with underwatering. Lecca takes out all of that. There's no real risk of overwatering or underwatering because the plant can take up water as it needs to. It's also pretty straightforward to fertilize. Once you get the nutrients that you need, you put them into water, and every time you're changing your water, you're adding nutrients in. So you don't have to worry about fertilizing every 2-3 waterings or things like that. So the first thing that you want to do is clean your Lecca really well. When you take it directly out of the bag, it has a lot of dust on it and debris, so you want to clean all of that off. So what I actually use is I use a nursery pot just like this, and I fill it with the Lecca and I run it under my sink until the water runs clear. You'll see initially the water runs super murky, but once it's clear, you're good to go. Now I've heard that it's not the best to clean your Lecca over a sink because eventually can cause issues with the pipes. So if you are able to clean it outside with a hose and a bucket or something like that, that would be ideal. I unfortunately can't do that, so I do have to do it over the sink, but that's the way to go if you can. So once you've cleaned off your Lecca, you can put it in a container of water. I have mine just in this big ramekin filled with water, and you can soak it for 24 hours or overnight the night before you're changing your plant into Lecca. Now I don't always do this because sometimes I don't think far enough ahead about when I'm going to be transferring plants to Lecca, but it is helpful to make sure that the Lecca already has water in it, which makes the transition a little bit easier. But I've also had success with not soaking my Lecca at all and just throwing a plant into it. So if you can soak it, that's ideal, but if you can't, it's not the end of the world. So this has been soaking for a couple hours. I did not get it together last night to have it start soaking then, but it should be good to go. So after you have all of your Lecca prepared, the next thing you're gonna need is a container for your plant to go into. So there's a lot of different types of containers that you can use. My personal favorite is using a glass container. This is a jar that I found at the thrift store for like $1 that I've transformed into a Lecca container. Now, to make flushing easier, and flushing I'll go into in my next Lecca video, I actually used a special drill bit and drilled a hole, you can see right there, into the side of the glass, about a third of the way up. But basically, I like using the glass container because you can really watch the root growth. So here you can see the roots on the side of the pot, and you can easily check in on how the plant is doing. I also think just aesthetically it looks very nice, kind of more streamlined if you're into that type of look. You can really use any sort of glass container if you want to go this route. I've used typical mason jars or really any type of jar or glass vessel. One thing I will note when using a glass container is you want to make sure that the top is as wide as the rest of the vessel. So something like this, where the top gets smaller than the rest of the glass, is not ideal because it'll be really hard to take your plant out of the Lecca once you want to move it to another pot. You want to try to have a uniform size vessel. So as you can see, this one is the same width all the way from the bottom to the top. You can also, if you don't have access to glass containers, you can use things like a plastic cup. You can use really anything. I've seen people get really creative using yogurt containers, pretty much anything. I prefer clear containers because you can see root growth, but really anything works. Now the other type of pot that people use for Lecca is a self-watering planter. There's so many available. I'll link the ones I use in the description box, but I use these ones from Amazon. What I like about them is they are super cheap and they're pretty cute. I mean, I like having the uniform white look for a lot of my plants, so they look pretty sleek. They are plastic, so if you don't like plastic containers, don't go for these, but I don't think they look like super cheap plastic. I think they still look pretty decent. So they come with 3 parts. This is the catch pot or the outer pot. This is the inner pot, and as you can see, it has holes all around the side as well as holes in the bottom. And then it comes with this wick, which is just a piece of string, kind of feels like a shoelace, that you put in this bottom pot to help wick water up from the water reservoir into the plant. So there's 2 holes, if you can see, in the bottom of this pot, and that's what the wick goes through. Sometimes these wicks are a little bit hard to get to go through the hole, so I'll just use a sharp item like a pair of scissors to kind of push it through. So I just put the wick in. You can see what it looks like on the bottom. There are these 2 pieces of rope that are hanging out. These will sit in the water reservoir and bring water up into the pot. You can see the string is across the bottom there. So basically how I like to start is I take my empty pot and I fill it about 1 inch with Lecca. So I like to cover the entire bottom with my Lecca. So as you can see there, the bottom is covered, but I don't have too much in it. Then I'm gonna take my plant, here she is, and I'm gonna put her into the Lecca. So make sure she's in there pretty good, and I like to hold her in the center while I'm gonna surround the rest of the plant with Lecca. Okay, once I have all my Lecca in the pot, I slam it down to make sure that the Lecca moves securely around the roots to make sure it's holding the plant in. This leaf has always been a little bit like this, so that's not because I just transferred it, but otherwise it seems like the plant is pretty sturdily in here. So the next step is to pour my nutrient water into my pot. I have my nutrient water pre-made, but I will show you the nutrients I use, and I can do another video specifically on how I mix the nutrients. Okay, so I just grabbed my nutrients from the other room, and I use the Flora series. So there's 3 different ones. There's Flora Micro, Flora Grow, and Flora Bloom. So basically you mix all 3 of these into water, and that creates your nutrient solution. I have mine pre-mixed into here, nutrient water, just to make it easier for me whenever I'm, feeding my Lecca plants. I don't have to make the solution each time. So when I'm first transferring a plant, I fill the container with a little bit more water than I normally would, just to make the acclimation process a bit easier so it's not reaching for water with its roots. So I filled it up to about here with the nutrient water. It's a little hard to show without spilling all the water. And basically I'm just gonna plop this plant inside. And that is it. She's officially transferred over to Lecca. I'm super excited to see how she does. Hopefully start shooting out some more growth soon. When I do transfer a plant to Lecca, I make sure to monitor it really closely for the first week to make sure it's not declining or anything like that. So definitely keep an eye on your plants if you can when you transfer them to Lecca. I wouldn't do it right before you go away on vacation or something like that. Although that does remind me of one perk of Lecca is that it's a little bit less maintenance, especially for plants that are more water loving, like my begonia that I started watering every 2 days to stay on top of. Having it in Lecca has been so much easier because I can leave it for a week at a time without having to water it. So this plant's all good to go. Let's jump on to the next plant. Okay, so the next plant that I want to transfer over to Lecca is my Philodendron Billietiae. It's been doing well. It's put out 2 leaves since I got it, and I got it in February. So pretty well, but I think it would do even better in semi-hydroponics, so I want to transfer it over. However, I do things a little bit differently when I'm transferring a plant from soil. Because this plant only has soil roots, it doesn't have any water roots, the transition from soil to Lecca may put it into a little bit of shock and it might lose some leaves, and I want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So I'm going to take all the soil off the roots, and then I'm going to put it in water for a few days so it can start to develop water roots. And once it has a sufficient amount of water roots, I'll transfer it over to Lecca. So obviously I won't be able to do all of that today, but I'll show you the process of getting the soil off the roots and putting it into water. You don't want to leave the soil on the roots because that makes the plant a lot more susceptible to root rot, so you want to get it off as best as you can. Okay, so I've put a trash bag down on my counter to try to make the cleanup a little bit easier. And here we go. So I'm going to try to get most of the soil out over this, and then I'll rinse it under the water to get the final bits off the roots. Okay, now I'm going to head over to the sink and run it under the water. So I got most of the soil off of the roots. You can see there's still some left, but I'm not too worried about it because I'm putting it in water for a few days first. So some of the soil will come off in the water and I can give it another final rinse before I put it into Lecca. But you want to make sure that they're pretty clean before they go into the Lecca. So I just filled a regular mason jar with water, and I'm going to stick this straight in with all of the roots. Probably will add a little bit more water actually. And I'm just going to leave it here for probably about a week so it can develop some water roots, and then I'll do the same process you saw with the Thai Constellation of transferring it into Lecca. So there you have it. That's how I transfer my plants to Lecca. If I missed anything or if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. I'll definitely get back to you. And stay tuned for future Lecca videos coming up. I'm definitely gonna do one on flushing, one on how I mix my nutrient solution, and just other tips and tricks for making your Lecca plants thrive. So if you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Bye.